Broncos country, what is up? I'm the Kodiak, and even though it's been a day since we just lost, it is now time to talk about all the positives about the 2024 Broncos season. And honestly, I can breathe a little easier knowing now that it's the off season, knowing that I don't have to Broncos game to stress out about this upcoming weekend. So leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're not already. We're going to be talking Broncos all off season long on this channel through free agency to the draft all the way to training camp into next year. And drop a comment. Let me know your 5 favorite things about the 2024 Broncos season. Follow me on Twitter if you like what I have to say on here. Let's dive right into it. So, number 5. I love that our owners are willing to spend money for better organizational results. So here's the deal. 2 years ago, when it was revealed before the 2022 season that Walmart was going to be the ones buying our team, or at least the Walmart ownership group with Condoleezza Rice and Lewis Hamilton, the F1 driver, and then, some other random people sprinkled in there, I'm sure, along with the Penners at the top running this, along with the Waltons. I didn't really know what to expect because I didn't know if they were going to, cheap out and try to get every ounce of profit that they could out of their organization like a lot of, hyper-rich owners do. But, this is a true advantage. Like, I can see the fact that we have owners with absolute FU money, that is an advantage for the Broncos. And honestly, I can see the results sooner or later. I can tell that the results are going to be spilling onto the field. So there have been at least 3 times now where they've shelled out thousands of dollars. Like I'm talking like $250K, $300K to revamp the field. And like I said, that's not something that, Walmart is ever going to scoff at. Like they have more than enough money in their war chest of resources to get something like that taken care of. But how many owners could be negligent about something like that? How many owners do we see have an F- NFLPA grade because they won't do the little things? They charge their players for food. The back-to-back defending Super Bowl champions, they still haven't upgraded their facilities even though they were promised that. And they could have been as cheap as they wanted to be because ultimately they are the ones who run the team. But we are light years away from 2016 to 2021 when when Joe Ellis and the Bolin family absolutely ran this team into the ground and there was no accountability anywhere in the organization. And what they're doing now, they're building a new state-of-the-art facility next to the current headquarters. New stadium is in the works as well, supposedly. It's rumored to be at least. But I want to see this taken a step further. I want to see the Broncos spearhead the scouting revolution and the football research revolution within the building, and they have the resources to do so, and I really, really hope that, they can compile the resources and hire whoever Sean Payton wants, and I hope that they can just build this thing from the top down and they can spearhead a revolution of like football data and football analytics and find that slight edge to make the Broncos more competitive. Because honestly, in an AFC that features the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills, you got to find some way to get an edge. And guess what? Our edge is money. So we got to figure out how to use that to our advantage because we have more of it than any other NFL team. Number 4, the coaching staff did an unreal job for the second year in a row. So for 2 straight years, this team has played well above their talent level. And it starts with our head coach in Sean Payton. Now, he is a good to very good head coach. How good? I'm not entirely sure. I'll let you be the judge of that because next year I think things are going to look a lot different. We're going to overhaul our tight end position, probably the running backs. We're probably going to get some new additions elsewhere. But ultimately, just based on the fact that this team is quite literally missing 5 top 50 picks that they should have had in 2022, 2023, and 2024, and the fact that you finished 8-9 and 10-7 while doing that. And by the way, you have almost $70 million literally off your roster and playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is absolutely phenomenal what Sean Payton and company have been able to do. And Vance Joseph, I just want to give a shout out to him. I know a lot of people weren't exactly thrilled with how the defense played in the back half of the season. And, ultimately, I think that was just our talent level catching up to us because this was a team that, as I said, with $70 million on the sidelines, was literally built to lose games in the context of the NFL and the way the NFL works. But I, coming into the year, did not know what to expect from our defense. I was kind of like, yeah, I guess we have a defense. Not really sure what to expect. And ultimately, uh, I just did not see this sort of season coming from the defense. The defense was a big reason why we were able to play as well as we did this year. I would like to see the defense take that next step forward. I would like to see them play tougher against the AFC contenders next year. But ultimately, one thing that I think should be noted is that we have some really, really good position coaches on the staff. Now, I'm not going to give a shout out to the wide receiver, running backs, or tight ends coach because honestly, I don't really know how they've done. I'm not in the building. But we do know who has done well, and it's Zach Streif, our offensive line coach, Davis Webb, our QB coach, who deserves a lot of credit for being able to help develop Bo Nix, Jamar Kane, our pass rush coordinator, who just got a promotion from last year, and Jim Leonard, in particular, are the guys I'm really, really happy with because we saw a lot of really, really nice progression from those units, and we got high-level play from pretty much those 4 units all year long. So I'm really, really happy with those 4 in particular. And I can imagine that, when you have guys that are that good at their jobs, we're probably going to be losing at least one of them this upcoming offseason. So that sucks to see, but ultimately, really, really happy. It feels like we have some stability for the first time in a long time. Number 3, George Payton, our GM, made me eat all my words about him. Oh my goodness. So along with many other Broncos fans, I was posting on Twitter back in March, April, saying that he was an all-time bad GM. I have a video on my other NFL channel called Kodiak NFL where I talked about George Payton, and I thought he was one of the worst GMs in NFL history. I thought he was one of the worst GMs in NFL history for trading for Russell Wilson and hiring Nathaniel Hackett. And honestly, I can live with missing on those because I at least admire the process of both of those. Well, I don't really admire the process of Hackett because the more and more that comes out, it looks like he was just lured in to, make a run at Aaron Rodgers. But ultimately, the Russ trade, I think that's something I can live with because I'd rather go for Russ and, a guy who was perceived to still be a good quarterback at the time rather than, sign the Teddy Bridgewater types that we had been so accustomed to. But either way, anytime there's a mistake, he cuts his losses, and he has done such a good job other than that. Now, he's a very good GM. How good? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure if we can put him in like that top 15 discussion yet. By the way, a lot of good GMs in the NFL. Just because I say he's not like a league average GM, that doesn't mean I'm like dissing on him or anything like that. But ultimately, what he's done, drafted 4 All-Pros, a franchise quarterback, signed Zach Allen, McGlinchey, and Powers, and he deserves props for all of those moves. He deserves criticism for all the shortcomings that he had and, the fact that the Broncos roster was in the state that it looked to be. But I'm fine with him for the first time in my Broncos fandom, well, besides 2021 after he had that really, really good first draft. I'm fine with George Payton leading the ship. And I owe him a public apology because I was not too thrilled with the work he had done. But, man, I am just really happy that he's spearheading our ship. George Payton, you have done really, really well, especially because this is something I didn't even think about until I was writing out my notes. Extensions get done quickly with no drama whatsoever. Surtain could have held out, and honestly, he could have made a big deal about it. Granted, he's not that kind of guy, but he could have used that as leverage. And he probably would have, driven up the price tag a few $1,000,000, and hey, the Broncos probably would have paid it. But you think about Meinerz, Cooper, that extension was literally done in silence, and I imagine Bonitto is going to get a huge bag this offseason as well. So yeah, and anytime he's actually had draft picks and a coherent coaching staff, he's absolutely cooked with what he's been able to do. So my prayer with George Payton, don't trade your picks. Don't trade your picks this time around. With the Bonitto and Mims selections, like, they have really propelled our team into another level. Those were our first 2 draft picks in 2022 and 2023. And Bo Nix was our first draft pick in 2024. Surtain was our first draft pick in 2021. So he's pretty much 4 for 4 in that regard. Now, speaking of those 2 of those guys that I just mentioned, Marvin Mims, Nik Bonitto, Zach Allen, and Riley Moss, they all had huge breakouts. And when you are dealing with a team that's resource strapped and when you have a talent shortage and a lot of people are not invalidly calling your roster one of the worst in the league, at least before the season began. Now, if you said that, I would think that you're hitting a crack pipe. But before that, I think it was very valid to say that the Broncos had a lot of unproven talent on the roster. But so Marvin Mims, I want to talk about him real quick. He looked absolutely lost as a wide receiver. Now, we always knew he was a good kick returner. Even when he was in the doghouse as a wide receiver last year, he was still making plays every week on special teams. So it didn't surprise me that, he had continued that into his game this year. But ultimately, overnight, he became our most dynamic offensive weapon. We started using him out of the backfield in the Atlanta game, and guess what? Sean Payton had said that he was kicking himself for not finding a role for Marvin Mims. And Marvin Mims, he's not a guy with an intermediate game. He's never been a guy with an intermediate game. And the things he does really well are go routes, post routes, and screens and slants. And that was something that Matt Harmon from Reception Perception had charted with his prospect profile at Oklahoma. So it felt like the Broncos were asking him to do a little too much that really wasn't a part of his repertoire. But ultimately, seeing him make those contested catches at the end of the Cincinnati game, like that just lit something in me. I was so happy that he was able to finally take those steps forward this year. Anytime he gets the ball in his hands, he's an absolute threat for us. And just talking to him, I can tell that he bleeds orange and blue, so I'm really thrilled that he's one of ours. Now, Nik Bonitto, a guy who became an all-pro edge rusher and ascended into one of the game's very best this year. Honestly, I think even the people who were expecting the best-case scenario from Nik Bonitto probably wouldn't have been able to predict this level of season and play from him. Coming into the year, I was just like, yeah, I think that, Nik Bonitto is our best edge rusher, but I didn't feel like the room had I felt like the room had too many Robins and not one Batman. Well, guess what? Nik Bonitto became your Batman and single-handedly changed the tide of two very important games, the Browns game and the Colts game, with 2 pick sixes. Now, I do hope that next year he can show up a little bit more in those tough games, but ultimately, I think that's going to come with experience, and I think that that's going to be something that he works on in the offseason. I really hope in particular he gets ready to go after the Chargers again because, man, we're going to need him against Alton Slater. Zach Allen, another one who I just didn't see turning into this level of play. Now, he was our Draymond Jones replacement, so we did really well by letting Draymond walk. And apparently this was J.J. Watt's protege when J.J. Watt moved on from Arizona. So he moved on to here and, a full offseason with his pass rushing coach or whatever the guy's name was did absolute wonders for Zach Allen. So I'm really happy that he was able to, take that next step forward because a pass rushing interior defensive lineman is very hard to stop and is very disruptive. So yeah, I'm really happy that Zach Allen did that as well. And he only gets better as he ages. I think he's 28 right now, and he's probably going to sign an extension as well. Riley Moss. This is another one that I just flat out didn't see coming. I know that a lot of people before the year began had penciled in Levi Wallace for that cornerback 2 spot. And Riley Moss, he did have his ups and downs this year, but that's just part of the nature of being a defensive back. It's a tough position to play. It's a really tough position to play. Wide receivers now come into the league, and they're, 6'4", 200 pounds. They're running 4.3 40s, and Riley Moss held his own. There were a few matchups that Riley Moss's opponent did get the better of him, but ultimately, I felt like those were pretty few and far between. We were able to play the way we were, and the pass rush was able to get as many sacks as they were because of Riley Moss and the defensive backfield being able to hold up on the back end. And our defense, when Riley Moss was out, looked absolutely I don't even know how to describe it. It was just night and day. When he was out there on the field versus when he was not. It honestly felt like when Surtain was not on the field for the Chargers game, the first Chargers game, and the Saints game, the defense held up better than they did when Riley Moss went out. But either way, he appears to have alleviated our chronic cornerback 2 problem. Yeah, I'm just really happy with how he has done this year. He's honestly my favorite player on this team. Him and Cooper DeJean are my 2 favorite defensive players in the NFL. I'm not biased in saying that whatsoever. Number 1, we finally found a franchise quarterback, so we can all breathe easy because this is something that we have been looking for so long. anytime it was mock draft season, we were mostly always looking at the quarterbacks for the past 8 years. But guess what? No longer do you have to find a quarterback because you finally found a guy who is your answer at the toughest position to get right in all of professional sports. And we had basically been the AFC Bears since Payton had retired and fallen off a cliff. Now, what makes this even sweeter was that Bo Nix, he was not expected by gurus to be very, very good. And a lot of people were saying that, oh, he was a check down merchant. A lot of people thought that he couldn't throw like 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Well, guess what? Most completed passes in the NFL, 20 plus yards downfield. And he did that with a very, very, very limited resource. And he did that with very, very limited skill position weapons. And this was a historic QB class. And currently, our guy is second out of the 6, only behind Jaden Daniels, who is absolutely historic as well. I'm a little sad that he's not going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, but ultimately there is no shame in losing out to Jaden Daniels. And ultimately, yeah, I'm just really, really happy. It's been so much fun to watch his improvement and his development, and I cannot wait to see this guy back on the field in September. So that does it for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Of course, I would love to hear your top 5, and yeah, either way, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.